for 5 minutes.
Mr. Secretary, we have recently seen overall traffic fatalities start to decrease, but fatalities of vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians and bicyclists, continue to rise. Under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Congress required states to complete vulnerable road user safety assessments. The law also required states with high rates of pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities to dedicate a portion of their highway safety funds to stopping these needless deaths. What is the department learning from the implementation of these provisions, and what else is needed to reduce pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities?
Oh, thank you for the question. Like you, we've been heartened to see improvements in the overall numbers of roadway fatalities over the last 8 quarters in the U.S., but we continue to see very troubling patterns in terms of pedestrian and cyclist injuries and fatalities or vulnerable road users. Part of what we've been able to do about it is through our Safe Streets and Roads for All program to help communities, including those undertaking the assessments you've described, implement plans that better protect vulnerable road users from exposure to traffic. I fear sometimes that media or other accounts of things like bike lanes treat them as ornamental when they are really about life safety. And whether we're talking about bike lanes, lighting, signage, or other measures, many of the things that we're now able to fund in hundreds of communities across the country are, we believe, contributing toward a safer environment for pedestrians, cyclists, and other vulnerable road users to go about their commute, their trip, whatever they're doing, without harm.
Mr. Secretary, last fall, the department issued guidance on how 2 loan programs, TIFIA and RIF, can be used to support transit-oriented development, including conversions of unused office space to new housing, which is particularly needed in the District of Columbia, which I represent. Has the department authorized any federal funds for office conversion projects, and how can we get more funds out the door?
We've got a number of those in the pipeline, and our first transit-oriented development loan was closed in April, the Mount Vernon, Washington Library Commons project, which is now under construction. We're very hopeful that this program will lead to support for those conversions you were describing. Post-COVID commuting patterns are changed, and the mix of what different cities require in terms of housing versus commercial square footage is different. We want to make sure we're helping them make use of opportunities to do those conversions, knowing the housing crunch that so many communities face. We can't predict a definite timeline for when some of the other applicants will be ready, but we are working through a number of applications as we speak. We'd be happy to keep you apprised of the development of that new pipeline in the TOD funding.
I want to discuss the importance of strengthening consumer protection in transportation. This past April, the department issued a final rule requiring aircraft carriers to provide automatic refunds when airlines cancel or significantly change their flights. I recently introduced the Household Goods Shipping Consumer Protection Act with Representative Ezell to give the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration more authority to protect consumers from fraud in the interstate transportation of household goods. The Federal Motor Carrier Transportation Safety Administration receives thousands of complaints every year from Americans who are victims of fraud in the shipment of household goods, and my bill would grant the agency the authority to reimburse states for enforcing federal consumer protection laws related to the transportation of household goods and to assess civil penalties against unregistered shippers and against entities that hold consumer personal goods. What other steps is the department taking to strengthen consumer protection in transportation, Mr. Secretary?
We see how fraud in the movement of goods has created just gut-wrenching stories from people who are vulnerable when somebody else has possession of their goods during a move. So FMCSA has increased its efforts to combat external fraud relating to commercial motor vehicle and driver operations. Legislation such as what you have led on introducing could give FMCSA the explicit authority needed to assess civil penalties for violations of commercial regulations, withhold registration from applicants who have failed to provide the right verification demonstrating that they are legitimate, and allow us to expand our household good program by engaging states as force multipliers. So we welcome this and appreciate your work on it.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes.